This video is presented by Western and Southern Financial Group, a game plan for your financial future. Every great team starts with a strong foundation, and your future should too. With life insurance built like a championship roster, Western and Southern helps protect what matters most so you can focus on winning today while planning for tomorrow. Whether you're just starting out your journey, building your dynasty, or ready to retire like a champion, Western and Southern has the right play for your life stage. Visit westernsouthern.com to get your free life insurance quote today. Western and Southern, built to win. Let's start with Sunday Night Football. Let's start with the Rams and the Bears, that overtime thriller in Chicago. Top 5 graded players for the Los Angeles Rams who went into Soldier Field and got the victory in overtime. Safety Cameron Curl at the very top of their list with a 91.7 overall grade. Offensive guard Kevin Dotson right behind him. Good to have him back in that lineup. 91.3 overall grade. Safety Cam Kinchins a 90.4. Linebacker Omar Spates a 90.1. Defensive tackle Tyler Davis rounded things out with a 77.2. Matthew Stafford in this game, a 42.2 overall grade. Anytime that your quarterback has a passing grade or an overall grade that low, figured the team probably didn't get the result that they wanted, but the Rams do. We'll talk about that a little bit more here in a second. On Chicago's side of things, safety Jaquan Brisker was their top-graded player with an 82.1. Offensive guard Jonah Jackson is 78.9. Safety Kevin Byard is 78.7. Wide receiver DJ Moore is 77.5. And then linebacker DeMarco Jackson with a 76.2. Caleb Williams in this game, a 65.8 overall grade. What was your stat that told the story here, Dalton? And obviously we'll talk about this game, but some look-aheads for the Rams as they're now head to the NFC Championship game, and then obviously what the Bears can continue to build off of going into next
Look,
season.
first and foremost, it was just like seemingly every other Bears game this year. It was just an absolute roller coaster, and they were playing a little bit slow for the first 3 quarters, and then the fourth quarter got wild, as it always does. But I think when you look at this Bears team moving forward, there's 2 things they need to improve. Number one is their defense. They're going to be looking for more defensive talent throughout this entire offseason, free agency, and in the draft. And then the second thing that needs to improve is Caleb Williams still within the structure of the offense, right? So when we do our quarterback charting, we keep track of basically your quarterback's rhythm, right? So most of them are going to be on time and in rhythm, right? Most plays. And then you have, we decipher plays that are disrupted by coverage, by, pressure up front. Then we factor in if there's rollouts and things like that. But essentially, when Caleb Williams was in rhythm within the pocket, 49.4 passing grade, 14 of 26, 139 yards, 2 big-time throws, 4 turnover-worthy plays. Now, the miracle plays, like the game-tying fourth-quarter touchdown with 18 seconds left, fantastic stuff, and he's been doing things like that all year. It's what makes Caleb Williams special, is the fact that he can make those special plays that only 2 or 3 other quarterbacks in the league can make. But within the rhythm of this offense, it's not consistent enough. There were too many games this year where it was too slow a start in the first half. He had one of the lowest completion percentages in the league, and I think he's gotten better. It's better than it was last year under the old coaching staff, but Ben Johnson's going to have to continue to reel him in. Caleb's got to work on his footwork and his accuracy. Those are 2 things he mentioned after the game last night anyway that he knows he needs to improve. And I think when you play with this lack of consistency and you're trying to constantly make comebacks in the last 2 minutes of games and you're just asking Caleb Williams to go out there and improvise and save us again, it just can't be done every single week as it did, as it was during the regular season when they set a record for the most comebacks in the last 2 minutes of games in league history. So I think the Bears had every opportunity to win this game anyway. Their defense played well for the most part. Dennis Allen called a really good game, and Matthew Stafford honestly was off for the second straight week. Yeah. It's just that the Bears offense, for as many explosive plays as they can create, it wasn't as consistent, especially through the middle of this game, as they wanted it to be. They did struggle with that 5-man Rams defensive front that we talked about. When the Rams only went to 4, the Bears ran the ball very, very efficiently. But when they went to 5, it was a little bit more of a grind for them, less than 4 yards a carry against a 5-man defensive front. At the end of the day, this offense has all the potential in the world. You see that for stretches. You've seen it in so many big moments this year, but they're not consistent enough, and that starts with Caleb Williams still needing to improve to get this team to the next step.
Really quick, how do you feel about them kicking the field goal or kicking the extra point to go to overtime instead of perhaps going for 2 to win it right there before you get to the overtime period?
No issue at all to me. I don't think in that spot that Ben Johnson's that he's going to do that. And he even mentioned, he said earlier in the game in their goal-to-go situations, not a whole lot of success. Based on what he had already seen, he had thought about it, but he wasn't going to go to it when they'd been struggling down near the goal line anyway. And I agree with kicking it anyway. Their defense was playing really well. They had a chance in overtime to go down and win it, getting the ball second, and then the interception obviously happened. A little bit of a miscommunication between him and between Caleb Williams and DJ Moore. I have no issue with kicking it there. I think that's a moment where kick the extra point, go to overtime, and play on. I don't have any issue with the way Ben Johnson.
I agree with you. There's a lot of people, obviously because of the result, you get to the point where you go like, oh, well, should they just have put the game into one play that they had the ability to control? You win and you go on to the NFC Championship game. I think Ben Johnson, he's been a coach that we have seen through praise and through criticism, be very aggressive in how he goes for things in certain situations on fourth downs, no matter where it is on any part of the field. So I think that it makes sense that the Ben Johnson thought about it. But if this were a game where they were tying it up at 45-45, then at that point I go, okay, I could understand you going for it here just to put the game into one play that you can control. But we'll talk about Matthew Stafford a little bit more in a second. Stafford was struggling in this game. The offense overall for the Rams was struggling in this game. Like you mentioned, the defense was playing well. You give yourself just as good of a chance to win as you do if you put it into the hands of your quarterback or your offense for one play to make it happen or not make it happen. So I agree with you completely. I just saw a lot of people talking this morning and yesterday about, does he regret not going for two? I wouldn't. I think that it was a sound decision for them to kick it there and go to overtime. Obviously, they had a chance in overtime and just didn't capitalize on it. To me, the stat that told the story is pretty simple with this one. I do agree with Caleb Williams wasn't quite as consistent enough, but man, Matthew Stafford wasn't either. Again, we'll get to that a little bit more in a sec, but the Rams, it was the fact that they didn't really pay for a lot of their turnover-worthy type of plays. Matthew Stafford had 3 turnover-worthy plays in this game, but overall, 0 turnovers happened for the Los Angeles Rams, and we had 3 turnovers for the Bears. And I think that that's just part of what goes into, was it tight down to the end? It was, but in reality, that stat that told the story is that the Bears, I felt, played better in this game and could have won this game. Maybe should have is always sort of a dangerous word and something that you add to a sentence when it comes to just how you play in the NFL. But them having the actual 3 turnovers versus the Rams not being punished for any of their potential turnovers, I think was a major part of why this game ended up the way that it was. So that was my thoughts there.
No, I agree there. I mean, and the Bears defense, and they played very well. It's funny because all year they really hadn't played that well, but they led the league in takeaways. This time it was the other way around. Their defense on a play-to-play basis played very well, especially after the first drive, but they didn't get the takeaways, and they didn't fully take advantage of Stafford on a night when he had struggled, right? And that's, like you mentioned, another conversation with Matthew Stafford that needs to happen. But the Bears didn't get any takeaways. They didn't give themselves easy fields, and they really had to work for it all night.
So Stafford in this game, he was 20 for 42, so below 50% completion percentage. 258 yards, no passing touchdowns, no interceptions, but he had 3 big-time throws to go along with 3 turnover-worthy plays in this game. We mentioned a 42.2 passing grade that he had in this one, which makes it 2 games in a row now where he struggled, right? He struggled last week in Carolina as well. I think there's something to be said that the weather kind of sucked in both of those games. This week was much worse. This week there was a lot of wind. It was bitter cold. It was snowing for a good portion of the first half of that contest. So the weather this week was worse than it was the previous week, although there was some rain and some wind in Carolina. It wasn't as bad as it could have been, but people have talked all week about, depending on what the stipulations are, like, I saw 1 for 9 for Stafford when it's, inclement weather, whether it's raining, whether it's snowing, like whatever that is, he's 1 for 9 as a quarterback in those games. I don't think that Matthew Stafford has the inability to play when it's cold or when it's windy and rainy, as evidenced by the 3 big-time throws that he had in this game. But clearly, like, he is not the same Matthew Stafford that he is if this game is being played in Arizona, in Cowboy Stadium, just in NRG Stadium, where he's playing in a dome in a controlled environment. I think he is a much more precise and impactful and consistent quarterback in that regard. So I will be keeping a very close eye on what the weather is like in Seattle next week when they face off against the Rams, because the Seahawks, excuse me, because the Seahawks are a tough test anyways. I think on an even playing field going into Seattle and taking on the Seahawks is tough. But then if you throw in some sort of, if it's going to be really windy, really rainy, like it can be in Seattle, I really think that plays against the Rams. And I think we now have 2 weeks of sample size where that is the case. Yes, they're playing good teams. It's not like they're playing terrible teams. But I really do think that Stafford gets affected when the conditions aren't ideal.
Yeah, and it's a tough defense to create explosive plays against in Seattle. And Stafford threw 2 playoff games on 10-plus yard throws, 13 for 37. He's been the best vertical passer in the league all season, but in these 2 playoff games, he's had a hard time making those plays downfield. Now, you mentioned it, really harsh conditions in Chicago, hard to throw it down the field, but just 4 for 15 on 10-plus yard throws. He's got to find a way to unlock it again vertically, because that's really the best part of this Rams offense.
There were times when I went back and I watched a bunch of his plays from that game where you're watching it from the all-22 angle, and he's like not seeing deep safeties. Like he's not seeing like coverage defenders, where even Matthew Stafford, who is a quarterback who likes to push the envelope and throw it into tight windows, and he's flirting with putting it in danger versus it being an unbelievable throw in such a tight window. Like he does that, yes, but there were plays against Chicago where just whether it was the snow or what, like he wasn't even seeing exactly where the safety was rotating to, in a way where you just don't see that from Matthew Stafford, I think, if the weather conditions were a little bit better.
And there were a couple of them where it felt like, especially a couple of deep balls, where he was throwing it just to throw it. Right, because Nakua's down there somewhere, but it gets harder in these games, in these postseason games, when defense's number one goal is prevent explosive plays. It's getting harder for Stafford right now, and it's only going to get harder against the Seattle defense that looks like the best in football right now.
My most impressive in this game, I went with Cam Curl, who was fantastic for the Rams. I know people will, they'll talk about the interception, obviously on the DJ Moore play, and they'll talk about what he was in coverage. I really liked what I saw from Cam Curl near the line of scrimmage. Like they would walk him up as sort of that nickel defender who would almost be attached to the line of scrimmage sometimes. Like sometimes he's not even in the slot. Sometimes they had him truly like on the line of scrimmage. And the way that he was able to set the tone in the run game versus tight ends that were on his side, or split zone tight ends or blockers that were coming behind the line of scrimmage. Sometimes Ben Johnson would do this a lot, like Sean McVey does this a lot with Puka Nacua. You start getting the wide receiver in motion, and then they're a blocking player towards that side of the play, wherever the wide receiver is flowing to. And Cam Curl was able to take those players on with such effectiveness and aggressiveness that he was truly setting the tone and setting the edge, and not letting those blockers create any sort of rushing lanes to the outside of the tackles. So I was so impressed with him. He played 81 total snaps, which is tied for the most on the team. He did lead the team with 7 tackles. He had that interception, 91.7 overall defensive grade, 90.2 coverage grade, and a 70.9 run defense grade. So I thought Cam Curl was just all over the place. And in a game where, when conditions are that cold, sometimes you can get players who just play a little slow, right? I mean, and I feel like it's natural. Your body is colder. It's tougher to warm up. It's tougher to have that adrenaline and that blood flow going to where you feel explosive and on your feet as much as you would want to be. You didn't worry about that at all whatsoever with Cam Curl. He was fantastic to watch in this game, so he was my most impressive.
Agreed. I'll stay on the defensive side at the linebacker level. The second-year undrafted man out of LSU, Omar Speights, he was just outstanding. And I thought Nate Landman, their other linebacker who just got a contract extension, he really struggled, but Speights stepped up big time. 81.4 coverage grade, only allowed 2 catches for 15 yards, also had 2 forced incompletions, and an 82 run defense grade. You talked about Cam Curl off the edge, and the Bears doing a nice job of really keeping the Rams' run game in the box for the most part. Speights was there flying all around in run defense, really locking down the cutback lanes, right? Beating blockers on the backside, playing as that weak side linebacker, getting around blocks and being where he needed to be at all times. And then you even saw moments in the screen game where he was the first one to the ball, beat a blocker, making tackles.
He can fly, man.
Absolutely.
I remember watching his tape coming into the league, and I was like, okay, great athlete. I just didn't know if he was strong enough to really get a chance in the league to play between the tackles the way that he needs to. But the Rams got a gem in him.
He's a really good pairing with Landman, who is so physical so often on the front side, on the strong side of these plays, and then he can just work around backside defenders, especially when things get lateral, and his ability to shed blocks has gotten even better in his second year in the league. Omar Speights was outstanding. Cam Kinchins was outstanding as well. This Rams team has so many young players that when they step up, their defense just looks so good at all three levels.
My most disappointing, and the only shout-out that I have here is I felt like it wasn't one of McVey's best games, especially down the stretch where they ran the ball 5 times in a row in an instance where, I even think that it was like 2nd and 12, 3rd and 10. Like, yeah, they're trying to burn clock and they're trying to get Chicago to use their timeouts because they were up in the game, but you got Matthew Stafford, man. Put the ball in his hands. You get 1 first down, you win that football game. And you were in a situation where 2nd and 12, 3rd and 10, you're not picking this up on the ground. You got to, in those instances, I think you got to trust your MVP caliber quarterback in Matthew Stafford, and that was just a little disappointing down the stretch. How I don't even want to call it like lack of aggression. They just didn't put the ball in Stafford's hands, and I wish they would have.
Well, it's funny because the first half I thought they put it in his hands too much. They did not run the football enough early in this game.
Yeah.
And then that sequence, when they had lost yardage, I think they lost 2 or 3 yards on first down.
Yes.
We're talking right before the 2-minute warning. Then I was very surprised, I'm with you, that he didn't put the ball in Stafford's hands on second down and especially on 3rd down, where I'm like, okay, you're on this side of the 2-minute warning. You're not burning any more clock. Go for the first down. Do not let – Caleb Williams has done this a million times before. Don't let him have the ball in a 2-minute situation with the full 2 minutes and all of that opportunity. I was surprised by that. The 2 sequences I want to give him credit for is when they took the lead 17-10, the 2 plays that got him the lead. There was a 4th and 1 with the jet sweep to Nacua and motioning him in. And so often Nacua inserts as a run blocker, but to take the jet sweep right out the back door there to get the first down, and then to have Nacua with a similar motion on the next play and actually insert Nacua and actually hand it off to Kyra. And I thought that was a brilliant sequence to give him a 17-10 lead. And then in overtime, when they had set up, I believe it was 3rd and 6, they had set up their formation and then they called a timeout because they felt the Bears would bring in pressure, probably Kyler Gordon off the slot, called the timeout, basically came back out in the same formation, seeing if Dennis Allen would bring all that pressure, would bring Kyler Gordon off the slot, and having Stafford adjust it with the dummy count, calling it hot to, I believe it was Puka Nacua there, with Gordon blitzing. That timeout was a really good sequence there from McVey, understanding, you know what, Dennis Allen in big moments, he likes to bring pressure. He was bringing it here. Mm-hmm. Let's come up with a plan to convert this 3rd and 6 that's really going to win us this football game. There were a couple of good moments from McVey, and he even admitted after the game, too, this was not his best game. It was not his best called game, not his best managed game. The players bailed him out a little bit, but those are 2 sequences I really thought that he found a way to come through for him, too.
Yeah, and I want to be very clear. The worst Sean McVay game is probably still a top half of the league type of a coaching game, and the best in McVay can win you a Super Bowl. But it was that moment down the stretch that I felt like I was pulling my hair out of, like, man, you got an MVP caliber quarterback. You got to put the ball in his hands, even if it's not ideal situations.
Everyone's got takes. Numbers have truth. And the truth is, most people are betting with emotion. Sportsbooks feed on it. TikTok gurus sell it. The hype machine runs on it. That's how you lose. PFF is different. You're betting with winning data. The same data trusted by all 32 NFL teams and the sharpest minds in the game. PFF betting tools take every prop, every matchup, every angle, and run them through our custom models. Built on the best football data in the world. What comes back is your edge. Simple, sharp, and built to win. Want to go deeper? PFF puts a pro-level analytics department in your hands, giving you the same insights teams use to find every advantage. Build your game plan with matchup analysis. Project every snap, every matchup, and every edge before kickoff. Because the smartest plays start long before Sunday. Hit rates show how a player performs against their prop and against defenses built the same way. It's the data that gives you real confidence in every pick. Next, Key Insights translates PFF data into the story behind every matchup, giving you the why that powers your bets. From coverage schemes to defensive looks, it's the context that turns raw numbers into winning decisions. When you're ready to take action, filter through every prop on the market and focus on the opportunities that matter, by game, matchup, or value. Then, shop for the best available line in your area and tap your book of choice to place the bet instantly. Everyone's got takes, but now you've got truth. Bet with data, win with PFF.